do automatic driving. I got a guy hanging out, and I want to see if we can find out where he's from, a little more about him. He says, yeah, let's do that. So I go over to his room that weekend, and he goes through his book meditation, gets in touch, starts writing, same stuff. Did I show him the other? I don't ever do that because I want it to be authentic in the moment. And if it's real, it'll be real. So he wrote the same stuff. I can't do this, and you? He said, no. I said, well, I know you've got another guy that you work with. His name's Herschel, right? He says, yeah. Do you think he might be able to translate? I don't know. Never tried it. Sure enough, we found out Zephyr was from what is now the southwestern United States over 20,000 years ago. So where do you think that went? There. That was 1976. So, from there, I went through a phase as I was opening up psychically. I was working at the cafeteria, which was right next to the honor school. I started hearing things walking past other students, and they were all kinds of negative self-talk that always started with you. So who do you think I thought they were talking to? Me! I locked myself up in the dorm room. Thought I was going crazy again. Then a friend of mine said, now what's going on? I told him, is it your voice? No. Is it Zephyr's voice? No. There's all kinds of different voices. Yeah. He says, well, is it possible that you're hearing the negative self-talk of all the other students that are walking past you? Because at that point, you're under the pressure of college. Okay, performing. So the most, and I'm sure that all of you do it too, still, the first place that you go is negative self-talk if you think you've made a mistake. That's just what we do until we can recognize that there really are no mistakes. And if you're not experiencing what you perceive might be a mistake, you're probably not doing anything. Because you just continue to roll with it. You learn from those. They're not mistakes, they're stepping stones. But gradually, you learn from each one of them, you ask better questions, and you experience the greater reality, and your awareness increases from that. Now, speaking of awareness, anybody ever have any necromantic experiences? Romantic? You know what I mean? Talking with dead people. Okay, cool. One of these evenings that a friend of mine went to, and I went to a movie and was talking about, we dropped as well, we were talking about the realms and boundaries of telepathy. And he'd asked me, what do you think? Are there any? I said, no. Because it's just thought. There's no boundaries to it. And so later on, going back to my dorm room, he's laying on one bed on one side of the room, I'm on the other. We're quiet. We had some music, I don't know what we were listening to. But his body, we're just looking into each other's eyes. His body disappears. His eyes remain, and I see Janis Joplin, Lenny Bruce, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Marilyn Monroe, just boom, 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 boom. And then his body shows back up again, and his eyes just, have one of those crazy eye looks, and I'm like, where'd you go? I don't know, I was hoping you could tell me. So those kinds of things happen. It wasn't spooky by any means. I thought it was really cool. So from there, we also experimented with telepathy, out-of-body experiences. We got a place where we could actually see each other's bodies leaving. Now, granted, this is, as teenagers, there's really no responsibilities that keep you weighted down and, having to worry about life, because those things get in the way from feeling free, even though it's probably a natural course of affairs. We still do that. And as, when we're younger, we don't have those constraints mentally. So we're in the dorm room one day, and this friend of mine, Gary, and I are just kind of communicating back and forth, and all of a sudden we hear these two girls talking. We walk over to the window, and a couple of girls across the street, up in a dorm, we can see them looking at us, and so we ask them if they are listening to us, and they laugh. I said, yeah, so we've been listening to you for a couple hours. And we're like, no, prove it. Meet us outside. Let's spend the winter. So we go outside, go outside, and as we go out, we feel like we're supposed to go to the right of the dorm. Their dorm was actually a little bit to the left. So we walk around the corner, and there's a whole circle of people lobbing snowballs back and forth at each other, all talking without verbal words. What do you do with that? You just have fun. It was one of those experiences. So, the following year, Gary is staying with his grandparents, his grandfather, actually up in Canada, and it's getting close to the winter quarter. He's not back yet. I'm like, dude, where are you? Well, call his parents' house. Now we don't know when he's going to be back. So, one Saturday morning, about 2 weeks before winter quarter was supposed to start, I lay down, and I plug in the tape by a band called White Witch. I don't know if any of you remember them. They're a Midwest kind of space rock band. And a song called Help Me Lord. And in the process, I closed my eyes and went inside, pictured his face. This is the process we went through. Pictured his face, looked into his eyes, imagined grabbing him by the shoulder, standing him up so I could see his entire body. And from that point, he says, we talk, and his ex-girlfriend comes into the picture. We talk for a little bit, song ends, I come back, go about my business, call his house a week later. He answers the phone out of breath. I said, dude, what do you think? He says, well, I just got back. And was you on the phone? So I ran in the answer. I said, cool, I want to ask you a couple hours at a time before you get settled. He said, sure, whatever. So I go over and pick him up, he gets in the car, I look him square in the eyes and said, hey, did you catch any flack last weekend? He looks at me and he says, yeah, he's on the bitch. He woke me up out of bed. He says, what? He says, yeah, I was sound asleep, I felt somebody grab my shoulders, set me up in bed, I opened my eyes up, there was your face, and behind your face was Carolyn's. We talked for a few minutes, you guys split, I went back to bed. Cool. Another validation. A week and a half later, he gets a card from Christian Camp in California, has the address of the Christian Camp circled, and in Carolyn's handwriting simply says, enjoy the conversation. So that kind of stuff's really cool. Now shortly thereafter, I bought 2 sets of drums. I'm a drummer. That opening music that you heard was a band I've been playing with or some guys I've been playing with for a couple of decades out here. But at this point, one of the sets was owned by a friend of mine's uncle who had passed away when he was in his early 20s. When I put them together in the dorm room, I got mixed reviews. So that played for a while. But as I got better, I started copying one of the different people. And Neil Pearce was one of my favorite drummers. Anybody knows Rush? Neil's the drummer. Fantastic. So I'm playing one of their albums, trying to get a lick down. Couldn't get it. Just struggled. And finally, I thought to myself, well, Dave Starr was his name, the owner of the drums. I said, if you let these things happen as much as I do, give me a hand. And sure enough, I felt this warm tingling sensation come down from the top of my head, go down through my body, And I put the album back on, and guess what? Nailed it.